It's not the military's fault you're broke.
Hold up.
In 2023, the average American made about $60,000 a year. That's about $10,000 more a year than the average military salary. There was a study that showed that 78% of these people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I, like you, used to think that this was because they weren't getting paid enough. But the same study showed that people who make over $100,000 a year, 52% of them are living a paycheck to paycheck. And what this shows me is that America doesn't have a pay problem, but instead, they have a spending problem. And I'm not gonna sit up here and berate you if you're living paycheck to paycheck, because I too used to live paycheck to paycheck. But instead, I'm gonna show you my 5-step process that I learned from the rich on how to get out of debt fast, but more importantly, how to stop living paycheck to paycheck and hopefully start you on your quest to financial freedom. So we have a spending problem, and here's why. The world is divided up into consumers and producers. The producers have done a really good job ensuring that not only that you like their product, but you feel bad if you don't have their product. That's why we see a McDonald's at every corner. That's why we drive flashy cars. That's why you have a $200 pair of shoes on your feet. We literally buy things we don't need with money we don't have to impress people we don't even like. And every time we do, the consumers get broker and the producers get richer. And I got fed up with this. I used to live paycheck to paycheck for the majority of my Air Force career. From 2006 to 2017, I was broke. And I wasn't even living paycheck to paycheck. I was living paycheck to maybe 3 days after paycheck before I was broke. But in 2017, Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather were doing their big fight. I had never seen Floyd Mayweather live, and I'm a big Floyd Mayweather fan, so I wanted to see his last fight, or at least what I thought was his last fight. So me and my boys, we planned a Vegas trip. And this was the first time in my life that I had ever saved money. I didn't think I had to save much because I had a friend who lived out there who I was going to stay with. So all I needed was a plane ticket and some money left over so we could have some fun out in Vegas. This is how broke I was. I thought that if I had $500 in Vegas to play with, I would have a good time. So I saved up my little $500 and I get to Vegas. The first bar we go to, I tell my boys, hey, I got it. Get what you want. They didn't even get nothing crazy. I think they just got like some Hennessy or something like that. The bartender comes back and it's $120 for 3 drinks between me and my boys. So within 10 minutes of being in Vegas, I already spent 1/5 of my money, and it pissed me off. Why? Because everyone else in the bar is popping bottles. You got people in the VIP section, and I'm sitting here slowly sipping on my 1 drink the whole night. And it was literally at that moment I decided, not anymore. So I became obsessed with wanting to learn how people become rich. But I ran into a problem. I didn't know anybody who was rich. I started thinking about all my friends and who I can go to ask these questions like, how did you get rich? And I don't know anyone who is rich. So I was at a pickle. Do I pay $1,000 to go to some how to get rich seminar? Or do I find like a rich mentor? Neither one of those options seemed ideal to me. So I figured out a third option. There's tons of rich people who have written books before, and they detail all the stuff that I can get from $1,000 seminar or from a rich mentor. I got them right in my back pocket, and it's a fraction of the cost. And that's my first tip to you all, is that you have to learn the secrets of the rich. And there's a couple books that I recommend, and these are starter books. The first one is The Richest Man in Babylon. The second one is The Millionaire Next Door. And the third one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. These are all easy reads. Matter of fact, if you don't like reading, you can just get Audible and listen to these books while you're in your car. Either way, you gotta make sure that you start learning the secrets. So like I said, I started becoming obsessed, right? I started reading all of these books, and a lot of the information seemed boring at first. One of the first things I learned is that I had no discipline in the way that I spent my money. Basically, I just took my paycheck, paid my bills, and then whatever happened, happened. Whether I went to the club, whether I bought me a new pair of shoes, whatever it was. I had no discipline with my money after my bills were paid. I would basically just hope I had enough money until next paycheck. But apparently, that's like a cardinal sin when it comes to managing your money. Every one of these books kept telling me that I need to create some type of budget. And for me, a budget was lame. So I had to first get over the idea that a budget is lame. And secondly, I had to convince my wife that a budget wasn't lame as well. And that was harder for her than me. Now, when creating a budget, there's a lot of different formulas for how you should budget. The one that I found most useful was the 50-30-20 principle. And instead of just telling you what a 50-30-20 principle is, I'm going to take an E3's paycheck and break it down and show you how you should be spending your money throughout the month. All right, so a pay chart for an E3 in 2024, it says that you make about $23.78 a month, but we all know we got some taxes. So let's just say you're making $850 a paycheck every 1st and 15th. So for the month, you're going to have about $1,700 that you have to make sense with. No more than 50% of that should be going towards your bills, your necessities. Because you're living in a dorm and the Air Force has a dining facility, that makes it really easy to where you don't have to worry about rent and food, which is most people's majority of their bills. So realistically, as an airman, most people only have to worry about a phone bill, a car note, some car insurance, and internet. So right now, the average phone bill across America is about $114 a month. That's crazy. I feel like that's super expensive. I just Googled it and it said $114 a month. Hopefully you're not paying that much. Matter of fact, I don't know how y'all feel about Mint Mobile, but they have $15 a month plans. But anyway, let's say that you are spending that $115 a month for your phone bill. Let's say you have a reasonable car note while you're living in the dorms and you're only paying $150 a month. And I looked up the average cost for insurance a month, and that's about $250 a month. And then as far as your internet, the average cost in America is about $40, and that's just a basic internet package. So right now with those bare essentials, we're at $555 a month. That's well under the 50% mark for your bills. Remember, you have up to $850 to spend on bills. Since I'm trying to get to that $850 mark, let's throw in clothing on there. Let's say that you spend $200 a month in clothes. Oh snap, I almost forgot. Gasoline. You gotta get gas for your car. You live on base, so you shouldn't have to travel that much from base to work. So let's say you spend about $100 a month on gas, or $95 a month to make it an even $850. Now we're at 50% for bare essentials. I highly recommend y'all set up an automatic payment to pay these bills on payday so you don't have to worry about them. All right, so now we're gonna move to the 30% of where your money should go. And 30% of $1,700 a month is $510. This means you have $510 for your fun. Budgeting doesn't have to be boring as long as you budget for how much fun you're gonna have. So $510 a month is how much you have to have fun. That's gonna be your food, that's gonna be your clubs, that's gonna be your bars, that's gonna be your dating. I think a lot of people go wrong with this fund because they like to have more fun than they can afford. In the last 20%, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later on what you should do with it. All right, so now we finished the second part. We created a budget. What's next? So luckily for me, even though I was broke, I didn't really have any major high interest debt. The only thing I had was credit cards, but I had it maxed out, and I would just roll this debt into the next month, into the next month, into the next month. I wasn't thinking about it too much. But after reading all these books, I learned that I should get rid of my high interest debt. And just thinking about it became stressful, how am I gonna pay off this $5,000? And I have multiple credit cards that are maxed out. So one of the things I learned, and I didn't get this from a book, I actually got this from a guy called Dave Ramsey. He had 2 different ways for you to pay off your debt. And one is called the snowball effect, and one is called the avalanche effect. The snowball effect, you pay off the smallest bill first, and once you finish paying off that bill, you take the money you were using to pay off that bill, and then you start paying your next smallest bill all the way up until you finish. And this is supposed to give you satisfaction along the way, because once you see that first bill paid off, you're like, yes, I got a win. The avalanche effect is the exact opposite. You pay off the biggest bill first, and then you work your way down. They say that over time, the avalanche effect, you pay less money because of interest, but the snowball effect gives you more of that satisfaction. So you choose which way you want to go. Like I said, I chose the snowball effect. And what I did is I took that last 20% of my earnings and I started putting it towards my credit card debt. And that is the third step. You need to pay off your high interest debt. One cool thing to note is that if you had a lot of debt prior to joining the Air Force, there's an act called the Service Member Civil Relief Act. And what this does is it brings all your high interest debt down to 6%. So to lower those monthly payments. Just trying to put y'all on game. In 2016, I think it was 2016, I have a toy poodle. My wife and I, we wanted to breed her and have toy poodle puppies. I didn't do much research on toy poodle's birth because when I was growing up, my dad had dogs, so he bred a lot of dogs, and I thought I understood what it was to breed a dog. However, when my dog finally started to give birth, one thing I realized about a toy poodle is that they have a hard time delivering their puppies. So my dog is in distress and I gotta figure this out. So I take her to the veterinarian and they had to do an immediate C-section because her birth canal was too small. So I'm like, oh snap, how much is this gonna cost? And because it's an emergency C-section, it's more than what it would cost if I had planned it. So they hit me with about a $4,000 bill to have these puppies delivered. Y'all, I didn't have $4,000 at this time, so I had to put it on a credit card. That is the worst thing you can do in an emergency, because now that $4,000 turns into like $5,000 with interest over time. So you don't want to rely on credit cards anymore. Remember, we just finished paying them off. And since we paid off our credit cards, that 20% of income that we were using, we now want to start putting that into an emergency savings account. And you want to try to have 3 to 6 months of your total earnings in your emergency savings account. So if you're an E3 in the dorms, you want to try to have at least $5,000 to $10,000 of an emergency savings account, just in case anything crazy happens. And one of the biggest differences between the rich and everyone else is the rich understand that their money actually works for them. Everyone else works for their money and they spend it, they give it away to the rich. The rich use their money to get richer. They understand that each one of their dollars is like a little soldier. They go out, they fight for them, and they come back with more soldiers. And then they send those soldiers back out. They go out and fight, and they come back with more soldiers. And over time, they build up an entire army, but of money, of course. So after you finish building your savings account, you want to take that same 20% that you were using to put into the emergency fund, and now you start using that money to invest into yourself. If you don't know how to do that, there's some really easy tools out there for you to start investing with. One I like to use is Robinhood. I highly recommend that you learn how to invest first though, before you start using a tool like that. But it's a really easy tool for you to start paying yourself. Remember, you don't want money to just sit in a savings account, because it can fight harder for you in an investment account than in a savings account. And then one of the greatest things about the Air Force is they have an investment account for you to put money into as well. It's called the blended retirement system. And this is basically a retirement fund for you to pour into, so that when you are in your 60s, you can sell off and have a great life. So you can take 10% of your money and put it into some type of investment account, and then use the other 10% of your money and put it into your blended retirement system. And if you don't know anything about the blended retirement system, I have a whole video which breaks it down to make it easy for you, and it's on the screen right now. Like I say, I really hope this video brought value to you. Stay beautiful, stay classy, and until next time, check me out.